Okay, here we go. I'm like I said, I'm super interested in everything that you do. Like I'm really grateful for Chloe to linking us up. And I'm gonna give you the reins for you to be able to explain your little journey here and tell us a little story of how you got to the position you're in and also what you do.
Sure. So my name's Charmaine Broughton. I guess first and foremost, I'd like to say I'm a mom. Even though I'm a new empty nester, both my boys are off at university now. And I'm actually coping with it, or maybe coping is not the right word, but um, I'm adapting to it a lot better than I thought. I was really anxious about them leaving just because, for 20 years I had my kids home. So they're off at school, which is awesome. I'm stuck with my husband.
Can you not send him to school?
Sometimes I think I should. And we've got two dogs. I've got, touch wood, I'm so grateful. I've got a great life, but I've worked really hard to get where I am currently. For those of, well, I'm certain probably most people don't know who I am. So I'm a chef. And I host my own cooking show called IncharsKitchen, and it's filmed right here in my kitchen. I'm also a new cookbook author. I just wrote my very first cookbook called Delicious and Doable Recipes for Real and Everyday Life. I'm super proud of that. It's been on a bucket list for years and years. I mean, I've been in the food industry for about almost 30 years. Like one of my very first jobs as a teenager what was in the food industry. And then I just made a career out of it. I went to cooking school and I did apprenticeships at fine dining restaurants and hotels. And I was so blessed to be able to work in like test kitchens. So writing a cookbook has been on a bucket list for quite some time. And then I've had like a loose manuscript maybe for about a decade. And then when the pandemic hit, I thought, now's my time. It just felt so right to me. And I'm very much like I go with my gut. If my gut tells me to do something, I'm in. And if my gut tells me not to do something, I'm out. But I think though that comes with age too. Like, when you're young, you don't always listen to your gut. Maybe you listen to your heart a little bit more, but at almost 47 years old, I think my gut is the best thing to listen to. Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. That's the way I live my life.
It's just I don't ever think that your gut, like your intuition, is probably a more eloquent word to use. It never steers you wrong, like in anything in life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to maintain, because I get really paid to eat for a living, fitness, and which I know is big. Topic of your podcast. Fitness is a huge part of my life. When I struggled with my weight for a lot of my life. I went on my very first diet at the age of 10, and really just struggled with my weight and body image, and was really depressed as a teenager. And in my early 20s, I had a conversation with somebody. And I had just had my first son, and I had a conversation with a chiropractor at a party, and I was complaining to him that I just had a baby, and and this chiropractor, I knew that he was a runner, and I really admired him because he lived in the town that I grew up in, and at this party, I said to him, like, I see you out running all the time. I would love to be active, but I just had a baby and I've got all this weight to lose and I'm nursing. And I gave him all these excuses. And he looked at me and he said, Charmaine, you have to make your health your number one priority. And this was about 22 years ago now. He said, you have to make your health your number one priority. He said, I schedule my runs into my day just as my secretary schedules in my patients. So I kind of felt like he, and what I liked about it is he wasn't beating around the bush. He was really just telling me the way it was. Like he wasn't trying to sugarcoat anything. And then he said something to me. He said, you know, there's a woman who runs the New York City Marathon every single year, and she has, I think it was cerebral palsy, I think, or some like disease of her muscles or something. And he said, there's a woman who runs the New York City Marathon every single year, and it takes her over 9 hours, but she does it. And those were the words that just like, it just really hit home for me, because yes, I was like overweight and I had just had a baby, and yes, I was nursing and all this, but I just, overall, I was like a healthy person, right? And those words just stuck with me. And he was just so blunt. And that's kind of what I needed, for someone to be blunt, and just get right to the point. So shortly after that conversation, I found out I was pregnant with my second son. So I had my second son, and his words just kept going on in my head. He said, you know, Charmaine, there's a woman who runs the New York City Marathon every single year, and like over and over and over. So when I got home from the hospital after having Colgan 19 years ago, I had every excuse. I had a toddler, I had a newborn, I was nursing, I was over 200 pounds. But I thought, I'm going to go out. And it was the middle of winter here in Canada. And out I went, and I lasted like 16 minutes, and it was mostly walking and huffing and puffing, but I kept at it. And I thought, instead of dieting, because what dieting had done for me in the past was I would diet, I would lose 5 pounds, then I'd gain 8 back. So I say that I dieted myself to weigh more than like most grown men I knew. Like I weighed, you know, so clearly deprivation wasn't working. And anyhow, so I kept at it, and I never gave up, and I'd get up early before my husband went to work, so we didn't have to pay for daycare. And my goal was to run the Ottawa Marathon. So I had Colgan January 31st, 2003. And my goal was to run the Ottawa Marathon May 2004. And I did it. And it was the first time in my life that I had committed to something, really anything, but for it to be a fitness goal was just so awesome, because someone who had never been fit before, I hated gym class. I'd make up excuses, you know, to skip gym. And I just was never athletic, but I always admired athletic people. Like I always had such admiration for people who made fitness a priority in their life. So yeah, a year and a half after I set that goal, I did it. I ran the Ottawa Marathon. It took me over 5 hours, but I did it. I ran every single step. I say it was 26 of the most glorious miles of my life. And then, you know, since then I've run a handful of full marathons. I've run literally dozens upon dozens of half marathons. For my 40th birthday, I did a half Ironman, which was so exhilarating. It was so thrilling, but you know, it's so I have a part of my cookbook here, because I know that you talk a lot about mental health as well. And one little blurb I put in the beginning of my cookbook, I'll just read it. I say, I might even cry. About a year and a half after I stopped dieting and started moving my body, I had lost over 50 pounds and ran the Ottawa Marathon, 26.2 miles. To this day, running and fitness are still a huge part of my everyday life. Although I was praised for my fit form and race medal, it was my mental health and newfound self-esteem that was my personal driving force. Living an active lifestyle while considering no food off limit gave me the confidence to set and achieve goals that I never dreamed possible. And I truly do believe that if I never had that conversation with Dr. DeFinney 20 odd years ago, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. Like the confidence that just physical, well, you know, and anyone who's listening who makes fitness a priority, it's not about your biceps or a size 6 waist. It's really about just that mental rush that it gives you every day. Like, I'm so excited to go to bed tonight because tomorrow morning I've got the gym at 6 a.m. and I just love my fitness classes. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. Well, I mean, I guess everybody's story is a little bit more than that, but yeah, I'm just so blessed that I you know, I've been able to sort of combine my passion of food and eating with fitness as well. For over a dozen years, I was the food writer for Running Room magazine, which is a really popular magazine here in Canada. I'm not sure if you guys get Strong down in New Zealand, but there's a magazine called Strong Fitness Magazine that I often contribute to. So I have a nice recipe spread there. So I just feel really fortunate that I get to and share my message that it's not about being thin. It's just about feeling like $1,000,000. And that's truly what I believe that fitness and living a healthy lifestyle can do for you. It's the ripple effect, I guess. Everything in your life changes for the better when you move your body every day. And I don't care if you're lifting weights and going to CrossFit, or if you're just, going out and walking for 45 minutes every day.
Wow. Thank you for
that
that
was
story.
A mouthful.
No. And I just want to say thank you, because you're proving everything that I say right.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, like fitness is a catalyst, it's
Mm-hmm.
I think we are all physical beings, right? And a lot of the time we need something to slap us in the face and be like, okay, hey, focus on this. And it's the consistency, which then bleeds off into everything else. When your confidence, the way you walk, the way you hold yourself, right? You stood up a little bit taller, and the way I feel like you develop a lot more respect for yourself, which then bleeds off, and you develop a lot more respect for other people, because you're like, oh, we're all in this together, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that just comes down to hitting the gym, going for Zumba, going for a walk, swim, doesn't matter what it is, doing yoga in the morning, in your bedroom, right? You don't even have to leave your room. Like, just get up, roll onto the floor, do some sort of moving around, and with something with intent, right? And then watch how your life changes in years' time. It's months and years. It's not days and weeks. It's months and years.
Oh, absolutely. And I like that you use the word consistency. Like, consistency really with anything you want in life is key. I'm just such a huge fan of that word. And it's nothing worth like nothing happens overnight. If you want something bad enough, you're going to put in the time, you're going to put in the work. And another thing that I think is very important about my story, and I'm sure there's many people that have similar stories, is I didn't stop moving my body after I ran my first marathon. And I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, I kept going. It just became a huge part of, it's like, it's in me. Like, to me, it really is like a drug. And I'm okay with that high. Like, I don't drink or do drugs, or what I used to drink, but I gave it up actually in 2019, which I'm so happy that I gave it up. I was before the pandemic, because I know so many people turn to booze as a clutch, and I'm not judging. We have all been through, everybody has a different story, and everybody has had different roadblocks with this pandemic. So I'm not taking anything away from anybody who chooses to have a glass of wine on a Friday night. To be truthful, the reason why I gave it up was because as I got older, as much as I loved a good craft beer, or I love a nice glass of red wine with like a nice dinner, every time I drank, it just made me feel like, can I swear?
Yeah, of course you can.
Okay. It just made me feel like shit. Like, probably about the last, maybe like when I turned 35, 36, every time I drank, it was so delicious going down, and I loved it with good food, and it was delicious, but it just made me feel like shit. And it was December 2019. A dear friend of mine had a girls' night just for the holidays, and we just went over to her house. We were drinking wine around her kitchen table. And the next morning I had the gym, and I went to the gym at like 6 a.m. and I was like really hungover, how old would I have been? It was like, red wine in your 40s as a woman, don't mix. And I was at the gym, and I was like, I never want to feel this way again. And I thought the only way I'm not going to feel this way again is if I give up drinking. And I just gave it up, and I never looked back. And then when the pandemic hit, I was so grateful that it wasn't like that. It's not part of my life anymore. But again, that's just my story. Different things, different strokes for different folks. I don't judge people who drink. It's just the way that it made me feel. And every time I drank, even though I literally drink maybe a handful of times a year, every time I drank, I just felt like shit. And I'd always complain. I'd be like, oh, I've got a 2-day hangover. And then I was like, you can either bitch and complain about it, or you can do something about it. And I just decided that I didn't need it in my life anymore. And, I've done a lot of research. I'll be 47 in a couple of months. And, I'm premenopausal is sneaking its little head, in. And I've just done a lot of research because I want to go into menopause feeling as good as possible. And from all the research that I've done, menopause and alcohol don't mix. So
No, I mean, I wouldn't imagine they do, right? I don't think it's the best idea is to
no,
literally put poison in your body as everything's
yeah.
like getting out of whack and changing. I don't think that's a clever idea at all.
And I really want to enter this next chapter of my life. I don't want to be one of these women who complain their way through it and they're like, oh, I'm 30 pounds heavier because of menopause, or I've got this because of menopause. And I don't want to be one of those women who bitch and complain their way through menopause. I want to go into it feeling as awesome as possible. So yeah, I think I'm doing all the right things. I'm going to the gym and lifting. Well, it's been a part of my life for a long time, but really just focusing on like, even lifting a little bit heavier than like I normally would, even if it's just 2 or 3 pounds, just because the more like, just from all the research that I've done on menopause, the more like lean muscle you have, I don't know what it does for menopause, but it does something.
Unlike,
and hey, it makes you look better in a tank top.
hey, there you go, right? You got to have a little bit of vanity goals in there too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, you're staving off osteoporosis, like you're creating a little bit more dense bones. Like that's, we're harder to kill, harder to break. That's what we want, right?
Well, actually, it's funny that you say that because so I'm in Canada where there's lots of snow and ice, and
not a lot of vitamin D.
Just the other day, I went out to my car 2 days ago, and I slipped under my car, and my shin hit the bottom of like the door, and like it scared the crap out of me because I like literally just went down pretty heavy. And I made my way back in the home to ice my leg. And I thought, if I wasn't fit and I didn't have the muscle and the strength, there is no doubt in my mind that somebody who doesn't exercise, and again, it has nothing to do with the size of your waist or the number on the scale. It has to do with like having the lean muscle and the strength. I bet you I would have broken my shoulder. I could have potentially broken my leg. And I would have been in a lot more pain than I was the next day. Like I always encourage women, if you're chasing a number on a scale or a certain dress size, that's not why you should be moving your body every day. Like, sure, if you want to look great, that's fine. As you mentioned, it's okay if vanity plays a little part in it, but you really want to be moving your body and lifting those weights to prevent things like osteoporosis, as you mentioned, and or if you have a fall, perhaps you can protect those bones because you've got the muscle under or on top of. So many amazing reasons to start lifting.
Like it's a preventative measure, right, rather than a reactive one.
Exactly.
I think if everyone took that and applied it to every aspect of life, I think you'd be in a much better still, right? Just in case. Maybe, it's always better to have a plan just in case you need it rather than not have a plan, then you need it and you're fucked, right?
That's it. Well, I always say to my kids, yeah, you're better off to have it and need it than need it and not have it. That's what I always say to them. Yeah.
100%. So something I'm interested in hearing about is, what do you think lifting weights has done to you psychologically in terms of like confidence, body image, now approaching menopause?
Well, I feel like, yes, working out and moving my body every day, whether it's I'm at the gym or just going for a run or even just hiking with my dogs for an hour and a half in the trail, just in general gives me just such confidence. And I think it's the what is it, a hormone that gets released? It's like adrenaline, dopamine, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Endorphins.
Yeah. But because of the research that I've done on and I'm certainly not an expert. I'm just starting to do research because I am, starting to like, I know how old I am and I know it will be happening. And I have had some like symptoms like hot flashes and stuff. So I just feel confident just in general, going into this next chapter of my life because I feel like I'm doing all the right things. But I love like going to the gym and, lifting a weight and seeing the muscle or the definition. Like it makes me feel so good to know, like at 47 years old, touch wood, that I'm taking really, really good care of myself. And that, again, never in a million years, as I read that little part of my book, never in a million years did I think that at 47 that I would be in the shape that I am, because of the confidence just starting moving my body gave me. It just literally the ripple effect. My whole life is, whenever I get complimented on something, or I always like turn it back to the fact that fitness is a part of my life. That is, and it's true. Like it, and I do believe it. Like I believe that moving my body every day. And again, some days I just walk. Some days I go to the gym. I'm kind of like an intuitive exerciser right now, or I have been for the last few years. I circle everything back to the fact that fitness is a priority in my life. Mm-hmm.
Hearing stories like this will never get old for me. Like it's just you're using it as a tool to benefit your life rather than becoming obsessed in the performance. And that's great, man. And I'll have conversations like that and coach people like that. And I've definitely been like that in the past, right? But for the masses, for everybody, for these like organic shells that we're like attached to, right? It's like they need to move around. They need to do some things, right? They literally need to play like a kid. It's like sometimes that's going to the beach and like building sandcastles as a grown ass adult, right? And then just like walking around, going for a bit of a paddle in the sea. That's your moving around rather than fucking scrolling TikTok or with your thumb in your ass on the couch, right? It's like, no, just walk the block or something, right? You don't have to do anything crazy. Go to the swings,
Yeah. No, I absolutely 1,000% agree. Like when people, ask me for advice, I always make it very clear. Like I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm just passionate about it. I always say, like, just seriously, just buy a pair of good quality shoes and start walking. Just start and like breathe in and breathe out. It just feels so good. Like this morning I took my dogs to the trail for like an hour, and just I wasn't even listening to a podcast. I was just listening to my breath. It's just so and then the whole like gratitude thing happens, and it's just, and the ripple effect of that, to just be so grateful to just be able to breathe and the freedom of walking in a trail. And
it's grounding as well, right?
Yes, it certainly is.
Someone brought an idea to me the other day of like thoughts is like a conveyor belt. You get like a million each day, right? And not everyone is going to be good. And I think people get stuck in this concept of every thought they have is like $1 million idea and they need to go so hard with it. I was like, we don't understand our brain, right? And if you have these like crazy, wacky thoughts, it's like, and they're probably not the best, and you're going down that avenue. No, sometimes you just got to let it go, pass on by on that conveyor belt, and grounding yourself by just focusing on the breath, being in nature, focusing on the present, right? It's such a great tool to be able to just let some things go and just, hey, the world's going to spin whether I stress about it or not, right? The sun's going to come up tomorrow. The moon's going to come up tonight. I got no say over that. I got no control. The only control you got is over yourself, right? And if you are controlled by your emotions, you'll forever be a slave. Right? We want to be independent human beings, so we got to be able to control that and work with it rather than allowing it to work against us.
I agree 1,000%.
So I want to go back into the kitchen.
Yes.
Right. What would you say is like the biggest misconception for the average Joe in the kitchen? What do they struggle with the most? What do they fail with the most? What's the easy way to get people in the kitchen?
Like just in general, you mean?
Mm.
Or in respects to like people who say that eating healthy is hard, or
Oh yeah, we'll go down that way. Yeah, I like that one.
okay, so um I personally think, I guess, whether that people think that healthy eating is hard or they don't have time to cook, I think that people overcomplicate it. Like, I don't think that it needs to be complicated. That's probably easy for me to say because I've been in the food industry for 30 years. I'm a chef. I have a cooking show. I have a cookbook. But you know, and because I do what I do, especially when my kids were younger, people would always say, "Oh, it's so easy for you to eat healthy because you're a chef and you know how to cook." And I would always say to them, "Listen, like, yes, I'm a chef and I cook for a living, but on a Wednesday night when I've worked all day and my kids need to get to basketball and the 3 loads of laundry need to be done, I'm not deboning a leg of lamb on a Wednesday night. I'm just making like a normal dinner, right?" So I have like a handful of things that were ideas that I would give to people that are just so brainless. And even if you're terrible in the kitchen, that you can recreate them. So one of the ideas that I give people is you get like a big loaf of like sourdough bread, like a round loaf of sourdough or pumpernickel bread, and you hollow it out so you can freeze the inside and use it for stuffing or whatever. And then you can go into your fridge and you can clean out your crisper, like load that hollow bread up with like veggies and maybe sandwich meat and cheese and sliced up cucumbers and grated carrots. So the sandwich ends up being about like this big. You put the lid on it, you cut it into wedges, and you've got this big, massive sandwich that's like loaded. Yes, it's got some deli meat and some cheese, but it's like loaded with veggies. So like I always tell people, that's such a great way to get in your 5 to 10 servings or 7 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables. It's so easy. You don't even need to turn on the stove. Plus you're utilizing a bunch of leftovers, right? So I always just tell people, just don't complicate it. Just because somebody on the internet is doing something, you can still be super healthy and not eat kale and quinoa. Uh, that's just my personal opinion. Like, I like to keep it very real. Also, like when people ask me about healthy eating and so on, one thing that I did when I first started exercising 20 years ago is, because I had always dieted, as I mentioned earlier, I had dieted, I'd lose 5 pounds, gain back 8. And I did that, and I ended up weighing over 200 pounds. And that was even before I had kids. So one promise that I made to myself when I started exercising, I also said to myself, instead of depriving myself and not allowing myself to have things, because that just led me to overeat, and then I would overeat, and then I would feel like shit about myself, and then the vicious cycle would start all over again. I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some research, and this was way before, well, it was like 20 years ago. So I like went to the library and did some research on like really nutrient dense foods. So I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fuel my body mostly with nutrient dense foods like peanuts and peanut butter and lots of fruits and veggies and whole grain pasta and bread and just everything that you hear, like nuts and seeds and beans. But if I want a piece of pizza or, a glass of wine or a craft beer, I'm going to have it. But then the next day, I'm just going to get on with my life, go for my run and whatever. So I thought, if 80% of the time I eat these nutrient dense foods and move my body, the other 20%, I can have my cake and eat it too. But I find with like, quote unquote, healthy eating, and these days, I mean, there's so many different definitions of what healthy is, whether it comes to food or exercise or whatever. I find just that people it's like an all or nothing, right? It's like, but I say, to me, if you really want that piece of cake and you're not having it, that's more unhealthy than choking down the quinoa and kale salad. You know what I mean? Like, if you really genuinely want that piece of cake, have the piece of cake. But another thing that I find is, and I'm going to be blunt, but and in most cases, I know not everybody, but if you're struggling with your weight and you're clearly, and you say that you're just eating kale and quinoa and this and that, you've got to be choking it down with a few Big Macs and milkshake, if, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
are, are you following me, what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's being honest with yourself. Like a lot of the time when,
Yes.
you
Thank
know,
you.
I'm not losing weight
Yeah.
in 800 calories. You're like, you're not eating 800 calories, right?
Well, yes. And I don't mean this, and I'm certainly not here to offend anybody.
Oh no.
And I feel like I have a right to say this only because I did do that. I would be like, oh, I don't know why I'm 200 pounds. Well, Charmaine, you were 200 pounds because you weren't moving your body and you were choking down medium-sized pizzas solo. Like that's why you were 200 pounds.
Yeah.
um and that's just the reality of it. In most cases, I know there are underlying issues for some people, and I'm just speaking kind of like in general. And again, I'm not in the business to offend anybody. I just want to be a little bit realistic about it. And I think, yeah, you hit the nail on the head, just being honest with yourself. But
Mhm.
I anyhow, going back to the healthy eating thing, and again, so many people have their own definite, like some people think that eating bacon and butter because it's keto is healthy, and that's fine. If that works for you, that's so awesome. My idea of healthy eating is literally eating everything. Do I focus mostly on, you know, lots of fruits and veggies, and we just eat everything, but I try to have most of my quote unquote diet be healthy, awesome, nutrient dense foods. But my goodness, if I want a piece of cake, I will absolutely have a piece. I do not turn down anything. Um, and that for me, that's the healthiest way to live, is to not live in deprivation. Like I remember having a conversation with somebody a few years ago, and we were on this topic, and she said to me, Charmaine, think about all the women on the Titanic the night that it went down. Like, how many of them passed on the dessert cart, right? Like, before they knew that the Titanic was going down, like at their dinner when the dessert cart went by, how many women turned down the dessert cart? And then that night, the Titanic went down. Like, how many of them wish that they really did? Life is short. Have your chocolate cake, have your whatever it is you're craving, but don't have it 24/7. But
Yeah.
I also don't think that you should have, kale and quinoa 24/7.
See, I love this
Mm-hmm.
because I love this approach because you're becoming self-aware, right? So you're figuring out how your body works, right? So for example, if I eat a shitload of oats, it doesn't sit well with me. Anything else, I can pretty much eat anything. Oats is like the only thing that will sometimes maybe like 4 out of 10 times. Like it's not even all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so you're understanding how you work physically, right? And how you
Yeah.
feel when you do that. And then you're also taking how you work with your psyche and be like, right, if I go 100% of the time how I work physically, how does it affect me mentally? And if you're like, I feel great, you're like, awesome, go do your thing. And then you need to look at it, how is it affecting me socially? Right. Because then if it starts affecting like relationships around you, which will then in turn start affecting you mentally, which will then in turn start affecting you
Mm-hmm.
physically. So there's like a lot more pages to this book, and I really like that approach of like, okay, cool, we're gonna try and look at optimal in this situation, and then optimal in this situation, and optimal in this situation. But there's better choices and not so good choices. It's not just like this is perfect and this is the worst thing in the world, right? There's so many more things. It's a spectrum. If you've got like
Absolutely.
a menu in front of you, you're like, huh, okay, it's not like no, bad, cross it out, bad, cross it out, good,
Mm-hmm.
circle it. It's like no, oh, what's in this? Okay, blah blah blah. What's in that? Okay, and then you kind of like create like a little bit of a ratio, and you're like, cool, I'll go with this today. It's a Sunday. Fuck
Right.
it, I'll do what I want.
Exactly. Like I made these beautiful cinnamon or not raisin, cinnamon, like what are they? Like cinnamon buns with a
Mm,
uh, uh, mascarpone, vanilla bean frosting. And
oh,
like
damn.
I had that this afternoon as a snack, but do I do that every day, all day? No. But again, for me, that's healthy for me. And when I say the word healthy, I just mean in the whole scheme of things
Yeah, yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
The
just
whole thing comes into that, like
mhm,
100%, you know. It's got to be like it's got to fit financially as well too, right? That comes into the conversation rather than like, oh, I've got to be like super fucking healthy and do this, and I need to take my protein, and I need to make sure I do this and whatever. And you're like, okay, cool, like add up the dollars, right? You're spending too
mhm,
many dollars than you're earning. Like that doesn't make any sense. That's not healthy. That's not a lifestyle. Now you're putting yourself in debt to reach that,
right.
right? So then that needs to come into the conversation. Or if like your mates like, oh, we're gonna go down to the bar on Saturdays to play some board games and share a beer. It's like, oh no, I can't. I was like, why? Is it because I don't drink or I need 10 hours of sleep, right? It's like, fuck
Mhm.
man, like life is also supposed to be lived. You know,
Well, that's it.
I'm all about working hard, man. Like Monday through Friday, I'm on my fucking game. Like
Yeah.
I have to go hard Monday through Friday. That usually just helps with my head. Like Saturday,
Mhm.
Sunday, I can't touch it. Like I can't work Saturday, Sunday. I can sometimes do half days Saturday, but Sundays I can't do anything.
Mhm. No, and rest is so important too, for again, just the overall quote unquote healthy lifestyle for like physically the rest and just mentally not being, that not being on is healthy. It's healthy to take a Sunday and do nothing or make cinnamon buns and just go for a walk with your dog on the trail. That's healthy. It doesn't need to be, you know, go 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 all the time. I'm with you, like, there's many, like with my work I'll go like really, sometimes I have to go, like when we film my show, I filmed 10 episodes in 3 days, so I filmed the whole season in 3 days. Yeah. And I love it, I love that rush, but it's about a month leading up to the 3 days is pretty much go go, and then it probably takes me about a week to just recover when we're done after the 3 days. But I swear, in that like month leading up to it, I put in probably 3 months worth of work. So I'm prepared. Yeah, I'm prepared to work hard when I have to, but I really value my rest, and I take my rest as seriously as I take, getting in my 2 liters of water every day, or hitting the gym, or fueling my body with healthy foods. Rest is so important, mentally and physically.
Yeah, I think there's a massive fear and an unspoken stigma going around with the whole rest, right? And I think we've got the concept of working on yourself in quotation marks wrong, right? It's like, oh, I'm working on myself. I'm doing my fucking third side hustle and working the 23rd hour of the day. And I'm like, okay, great, Jeremy, right? But in like 2.5 days' time, you're going to burn out, right? And then you're going to be no use, no ornament, and you're going to be
Right.
literally fucked and can't do anything,
Hmm.
never mind string a sentence together. And again, I got to hold my hands up. I'm that dude, right? There's a lot of times where I will be that dude. And I think you need to know you can go there, right? It's like
Yes.
there's times where you need to go there, but you've got to be
Uh-huh.
self-aware enough to be like, dude, like I've got to have a conversation with myself, Alex. You've got 7 days to do this, man. You've got 3 days, you've
Hmm.
got a month, you've got however long. It's like you are running on fumes. You cannot do this forever. You are not a fucking superhero, although you like the concept. You cannot fucking fly, right? And it's like, do it for X amount of time, then you need some time off. Like
Hmm.
forcibly, okay, I'm not going to open my laptop today. Or if I do open my laptop today, my emails are off. My notifications are off on my phone. I don't pick up my phone. Or, I don't want to see a single soul today. I'm going to go off in nature and literally just kind of sit with myself, right? And I think we've lost
Hmm.
that part. Like people are really scared of it. Like people are scared of the thoughts they get in their head when they're alone. And it can be quite creepy at times, but I think you come back really refreshed. Like I came up with a concept ages ago where I was like, I'm just getting ill, right? So if you start getting a little bit disconnected, you're burning out, right? Usually it's from all the fucking hustling people do.
Yeah.
And you disappear, right? And you kind of be with yourself. Like you literally are like getting ill. You're cleansing your thoughts and your mental state. And then you come back a lot better. You come back in such a
Hmm.
better position mentally. But people are scared to do that because it is scary. I'm like, yeah, so is getting out of bed in the morning and facing the day.
Yeah.
You do it.
But I also think, though, coming to that realization, there's like, I think it happens. I don't know, and this is with no disrespect to people who are 25, but I think it comes with like maturity and you just knowing yourself. And I think I don't, I just think the older that you get, you're just more self-aware of exactly what you just said, like taking that time literally to yourself and your thoughts and so on. So that's one reason why I'm embracing getting older, is just these realizations that it's like, yeah, it's okay not to, because yes, I used to go 24/7, 7 days, or maybe not 24/7, but I was that hustler and so on. And then I just realized the beauty of not hustling, and you can still get as much stuff done, and work really hard and feel really good about yourself and accomplished, and be able to, chill out on a Sunday or take time that you need. I think, again, that priority is just as important as the moving your body and drinking green smoothies.
Drinking green smoothies, yeah. 100%. Do you want me to throw a spanner in the works?
A what?
Do you want me to throw a spanner in the works? Or a wrench in
I
the
don't
works,
know.
I guess you guys call it.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I'm 25.
Are you really?
Yeah,
Oh,
man.
well, it's funny because when I said that, then I took a double take at you, and I'm like, shit, I wonder how old he is. He's got to be what, 30? He won't be that anyhow.
Yeah.
Well, like, I admire you a lot, and everything that you are. You really only 20? I could be your mother.
Yeah, man.
I could be your mom.
25.
I have a almost 21-year-old and a 19-year-old. So they're 19 and 20.
Look, man, we've all
But
got
kudos.
stories, We've all got stories, and I think I offer a lot to. I'm a little bit spiritual, right? I grew up
Yeah.
with my mom's quite spiritual, so I'm open to that. I'm open to learning in whatever capacity, right? But I think I put it down to a lot from the environment I grew up in. Like, it's definitely, you gotta grow up rather fast, and if you don't, the world chews you up, spits you out, and you're not going to come out on top. So we've all got stories, and people are going to learn along the way. Some people learn real early, some people learn real late. Like, yeah, okay, it's great, like you got like a mature head on your shoulders, I might hear a lot of the time. I'm like, yeah, great, but like also I'll struggle in the fact that I didn't really have a childhood, right? Like, and then there's a lot of things missing, and I have to be able to like sit with myself, usually on a rock. I'm a poet too, so like I spend a lot of time on my own.
Yeah, I was reading that about you.
Thank you. Yeah. And then you've got to go back into that. So it's swings and roundabouts, man. Like, there's pros and cons and everything.
But yeah, I mean, I know you're only 25, but yeah, there's just beauty. I guess really there's just beauty in everybody's story if you really sit down and get to know them and understand why they work, like how they tick and why they do the things that they do. And I think that your story can be even better if you if you make yourself your number one priority, and not in a selfish way, but how much better your story can be, because you might go into the world and share it if you feel fantastic about yourself.
Yeah, a weird concept that people struggle to get their head around is, if you connect more with yourself, you can end up giving more. Right? So you can help more
without
people.
a doubt.
And they're like, no, I've just got to help people, I've got to put them in front. I'm like, yeah, okay, but you're running on like 10%. I was like, what are you going to do with that? It's like trying to drive to the destination in first gear. I was like, you're going to get there real slow, man. You've got to be able to connect with yourself, figure that out, pour into your cup first before you pour it in other people's.
100%, without a doubt. Like, and I find too, like a lot of like women and moms will always put, and obviously there's times in your life, in anybody's life, whether you're a mom or not, that you might put somebody before you. Like, absolutely. It's just part of being, I'll just speak to parenthood, whether you're a mom or dad. Yes, there's going to be times that, of course, you're going to put your children before yourself. But also, what I'm not a fan of is people who play the victim. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I don't have time for this because I've got that or whatever. But you've got time to, do X, Y, or Z. It's all comes down to, personal choice and what really works for you. And I think, finding what works for you, and you even said it's not going to happen overnight, it's like the journey of life. That's the best part of life, is when you find out what works for you. And it may have taken 20 years to be like, oh my God, yeah, that's the best part.
Yeah, we all want the answers, right? And the answer's like the destination, and the destination is the fucking end, right?
Right.
So why do we want to get there? It's like,
I know.
Save that off.
And it's everything that happens in between. That's the best part. Like, that's the part you're like, oh my gosh, yeah. Like, even just with my cookbook, I'm so proud of it. I'm so beyond proud of it. But I think of the like, yes, maybe the last like 2 years specifically leading up to it. But I think of the last 30 years leading up to it, like if all of everything that happened in my life led me to this book. Like, that's just how I'm looking at it. Like, if there was a different fork in a road, pardon the pun, I may not have this book. But it's definitely like the journey to the destination, which is it's worth the ride. It's the best, and good and bad, in your life. Even shitty, even shitty things. Like, I'm so glad that, like, looking back, that I came into fitness when I did, and I had that conversation, and it was like, yes, when I was a teenager, it sucked, but life isn't always great. Like, you have to go through the downs and the lows to enjoy and appreciate, like, the highs or the good times.
100%. That's what makes the stories. We all like going to the pictures in the movies, right? And if you went in, paid $10 and you sat down, it was like Once Upon a Time, and they lived happily ever after the end, you'd be like, that was shit, give me my money back. Right?
Yeah.
Where's the plot twist? Where's the character that we just hated, that we just wanted to get away from, right? It's like, nah, man.
Yeah.
That's life as well. Like, you don't want your refund. You want an interesting story to be able to share, nursing a whiskey and a cigar when you're 90 years old, or a coffee in the middle of fuck nowhere, when you just kind of pass someone in who's camping. You're just like, hey, do you want to share a story? Yes, I do, man. What's your story? It's like, well, how long you got? Like, that's what makes fucking life entertaining.
I agree. 1,000%. I agree.
So I got 3 questions.
Okay.
Right. What's the greatest piece of life advice you've ever received?
Probably from a teacher in high school who knew, like, I didn't do very well in high school, and he knew I was just really struggling, like, emotionally and everything. And he pulled me into his office, and he said to me, Char, he said, you are just one of these people who are going to have to work really hard for anything that you want in life. He said, nothing will come easy to you. And he was right. And like, I'm getting choked up just because he passed away, but that just stuck with me. I always, whenever I set a goal, I always thought about him, like, and those words that he said to me. And I just remember it like yesterday, just that I was going to have to work really hard for what I wanted. And I think deep down, he like really believed in me, but he just knew that I wasn't going to be an easy ride. And yeah, every time I accomplish something, I always think about him.
Wow. That's beautiful, man. And like,
well, there's something there is something to be said for like, I know we talked about hard work and people are, but I think there's a difference between like working hard, like working hard for like a goal, as opposed to just being like what you said, like these people that have like 7 side gigs and all that, like just working to just work,
Yeah.
as opposed to working hard at and towards something. So every time I work hard and towards something and I accomplish it, I think of him.
Wow.
Mhm.
I relate to that a lot. Like I coach a lot of kids and have done in the
Mhm.
past, right? And usually when I coach kids out of like lower decile areas, I'll be like, look, guys, like, because they always think there's only one way, right? There's no way out. There's only one way to do things. I'm like, look, you've got 3 ways out. One, you go academics, and if you're anything like me, that's a write off. So that's a no go. 2, you've got sport, right? You can use sport as a way out, and if you're not
Right.
sporty or you get injured or whatever, right, you've only got one left. And number 3 is you've got to work harder than you want. You've got to
Mhm.
absolutely. Sometimes you got to do a couple jobs. Sometimes you got to do 3 jobs. This is not forever. It's the short term. You've got to be able to think, hey, I'm doing this, so then I no longer have to do it. But there are 3 options. It's not just crime or whatever, right? Or
Right.
sit on the benefit. Like, you're not born into misery. Like, you can get out. There are 3 options. And the last one, if you're not sporty or academic, is you're gonna have to work bloody hard, mate.
Yeah. And not giving up too. Like
Don't give up.
like people will say to me, oh, how to, and I was like, because I never gave up. I always knew what I wanted and I never,
Wow.
ever, ever, ever gave up. Uh-huh.
That's
Mm-hmm.
inspiring, mate. I hope you know that.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah. No, I like seeing and hearing people's stories of wherever they've been and they just keep going. I know fires me the
Mm-hmm.
fuck up. I think about it at random times when I'm working at like 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And I'm sure everybody else listening will gain something from that as well. So I appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you. Okay, the next 2 questions.
The second one is what's the worst piece of life advice you've ever received?
The worst piece. Um, the worst piece of advice. Huh. There's been a lot. Um, the worst piece of advice. I think it wasn't really advice, but I got it from a lot of people because I've always had like an entrepreneurial spirit. And I know in the last maybe 10 years, entrepreneur is like, it's mainstream and it's like a cool word. And I think it's great that there's lots of people who want to be entrepreneurs, but um a lot of people were always very like confused and questioned my choices of in business, uh and I just always knew in my gut that those things would pay off, and I'm just so glad that I didn't listen to them. I guess people, because I wasn't very like conventional, like I was never like a 9 to 5er. I always would have like ideas and I always went with these ideas, and people just, especially like close friends and family, and maybe some of their concern, quote unquote, was because, it wasn't like a regular paycheck, but I always knew deep down that I was doing the right thing for me. I'm not saying everybody has to be like that. I'm not saying that at all. But for me, I knew it would always work out.
Mm.
It took it took over 40 years. Oh.
Look, man, like we said, we've all got stories. You've got to go down the wrong paths first.
Yeah. So I guess to maybe rephrase it is just, again, maybe just going back to what we talked about at the beginning, is just going with your gut and go and really just listening to your inner voice, and don't necessarily like listen to what people have to say to you, but you don't need to. You can listen to it and then, sort it out in your brain and be like, well, that works for them, but that won't work for me and my lifestyle. And yeah, I've always beat to a different drum.
Yeah, and it's live
Hmm.
and let live too, right? It's like, oh, okay, that's the way you want to live your life. Fantastic. High five. Go crack
Hmm.
on with that. I'm going to take things from that, learn from it. I'm going to discard what won't work for me and not like cast it aside, right? It's just like,
Right.
just because it's not working for you doesn't mean like they're wrong, right? And just because it works for
Exactly.
you doesn't mean everybody has to do it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's funny when people try and like, oh no, this works for me. This will work for you. You're like, shh, okay,
Hmm.
I'm gonna do my thing anyway. Carry on. You know. Last question is 3 words you tell your younger self.
Oh, 3 words. Oh, probably just, it's more than 3 words, but that probably won't surprise you at this point in the
I'll allow it.
podcast.
I'll allow it.
Um, just that, like, everything will work out in the end. Hmm.
Mm,
Yeah, that everything will work out. And I do totally believe that. Uh-huh. And sometimes it sucks along the way and I'm getting choked up. That's a really good question. Yeah, like sometimes it sucks along the way and life can be hard. Like, I don't want to sit here and say that life can be really, really, really hard sometimes. But if you fall 7 times, I love that. You get up 8 and you keep trekking on, because as you mentioned, the sun's still going to come up tomorrow and the moon's still going to set. And if you don't, and sure, sometimes you might be down for 2 or 3 days, but get up and everything will work out in the end and everything will be okay.
yeah, it's not the end of the world when you get knocked down, right? Like you can stay there for a little bit. That's okay. Not forever. Like stay there
Right.
for 2 to 3 days. I think that's really, really important that you said that. People get really in their head of, oh my God, I've been down for 20 minutes or 4 hours, right? And you're like, dude, like sometimes it takes a fucking week to get out of that little rut.
Sure.
Like,
Sometimes it takes a month. Sometimes it takes two. And I think it's really important to take the time that you need. And I think most people know the time that they need, and then they also know when it's like, okay, I'm taking it a bit too far.
yeah,
You know, but I also believe that those times that you're down, you need those times when you're
yeah,
down, because that's what makes you better and stronger and come back with a vengeance and work even harder and learn. Like, you know, every like the my kids have had, a quote unquote decent life, but a couple, things that happened to them in high school. I always say to them, like, it may have sucked now, but I will tell you, like, you not making that basketball team and how it affected you, you'll like, then my son went out and he worked extra hard. So he made it the next year. Like, in those, if life was always perfect and easy, there would be no really good stories to share. We
yeah.
wouldn't be here right now, right? We need those stories. We need to be cut from the team and not make it, and or not get that job or this job or whatever, because
Mhm.
that's how we grow and that's how we become better and more awesome and appreciate what we do have.
100%. And
Hmm.
do you find they're creative too when you're in that little bit of a slump? you
Oh, yes.
you see life differently and you end up coming up with some wacky ambitious ideas, and if you run with them they could be like industry changing.
Uh-huh. Yes, I 1,000% agree.
I mean, I
Hmm.
made 2 fucking books out of it, like in those like being down, you know what I mean? It's like
Hmm.
it can't be a bad thing. Do something, draw, I don't know, walk,
Yeah.
hike, connect with yourself, whatever it is. You kind of go
Hmm.
down those creative avenues and you come out the other side knowing so much more in something. And
Yeah,
that can only
absolutely.
ever be a positive experience.
Hmm.
Gain something from it.
Yeah. Even knowing that you don't want to feel that way again. There's a little bit of
Yeah.
beauty in that too.
Yeah,
Realize,
fuck
like,
yeah.
knowing I don't want to. Well, it kind of goes back to, the me not wanting to drink anymore. Like I knew how it made me feel, and I was either like, I keep doing it and I don't, and I feel like crap, or I make a decision to stop doing it. So yeah, you need the lows to enjoy the highs, and and to know what you do and don't want in life.
100%.
Hmm.
I really appreciate your time and everything that you're doing, mate.
My absolute pleasure. It was so nice talking to you.
Thank you. I mean, if you're ever in, Middle Earth, dicking around, like, let me know. You can show me how to cook, and we'll grab a coffee and chat some shit.
We should do a Zoom cooking class.
Yeah, sure. I'll be there.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you
Yeah, we
host a
should.
Zoom cooking class, I'll be there.
Okay. It was such a pleasure, an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you. And have a great day in the Great White North.
Oh, thank you so much and enjoy the heat.
Always. All
Okay,
right, mate.
bye-bye.
Take it easy. Bye, everybody.